It is 6 o'clock, September 19th, 2023, and I call to order the City of Commerce regular City Council meeting. Tonight, for our invocation tonight, we are honored to have Pastor Ben Kreitz of Heartland Apostolic Church in Commerce, Texas, on Highway 11 East. Pastor Kreitz and his wife Gina have served as pastor of the church for over 13 years. Ben and Gina have been married for 15 this November and have a 9-year-old daughter, Lydia. Pastor Kreitz describes Heartland to be a spirit-filled church with wonderful, down-to-earth, and kind-hearted people from many different walks of life. Their services are held on Sunday mornings at 10:30 and Wednesday evenings at 7. Pastor Kreitz, thank you for our service to our community. Please come and lead us in the invocation.
Good evening. I appreciate the invite, and this is kind of my first time to do this, so I didn't know if I should bring my 45-minute prayer or my hour prayer. But anyway, thank you for inviting us, and thank you for all that you do. And I'm a minister of the gospel, but my 9 to 5 is in construction, so I don't get to do, not often here. I would like to be a little more, but anyway, it's good to be here tonight. And our church is kind of out in a cow pasture. But I know a little town that started on a cow hill, so we should be okay. But I think this is one of the few prayers that I have prayed about what I'm going to pray about. But I guess with that, let's go ahead and get started. Jesus, we thank you for your mercy, for your goodness. We know that you have ordained the powers that be, and we ask, God, that you'd keep your hand of protection over these city officials in their duties. We pray that you would help them. We pray that you'd facilitate them, that you'd give them whatever it is in each situation that they need. We pray that you'd keep your hand of protection over our city. We ask, God, that you'd be with our first responders, that you would watch over them, and that you'd provide for them, that you'd keep your hand over their work. And we pray, God, that you would bless this town as it grows, and that you'd help us to fulfill our greatest potential. And we're thankful for your mercy. We're thankful for all that you've provided us. We ask that you'd help us to be prudent, diligent, and thankful for all that you do. And we thank you for keeping your hand over our town and our officials. And we ask that you bless this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Tonight, I have the honor of presenting a proclamation from the City of Commerce to the Captain Charles Croxall Chapter, Texas Daughters of the American Revolution. Whereas September 17th, 2023 marks the 236th anniversary of the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. And whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915, Chapter 875, safeguards the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th and ending September 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Teddy Real, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Commerce, do hereby declare the week of September 17th through September 23rd, 2023 as United States Constitution Week. In the City of Commerce, Texas, we urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all of the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. We also ask our citizens to reaffirm the principles the framers of the Constitution intended in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Congratulations. In honor of their anniversary, they will be leading us in the pledge tonight. If you would, please come forward.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Item 4 is our consent agenda. Do we have any questions from the council on the consent agenda? There being none, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 5 on the agenda is presentation to the City Council by members of the public. I would like to make note to anybody that wishes to address the council that the council is not allowed to respond to your comments or questions. The response to the public is limited. Each person coming forward will have 3 minutes. And we can, number 1, a statement of fact or policy. Number 2, direction to take up the issue with a city staff member. Number 3, an offer to place the item on a future council agenda. I do have one card tonight. So Mr. Rick Johnston, please come forward, provide your name, address, and purpose for your visit tonight. Doing well, sir.
While I had, I kind of take care of a place for a friend of mine that's passed on, and his family members are away and all. And anyway, I'd got some notices in, like in the yard the other day. I got 2 notices at one time. One of them was a legal notice here to inform property owner, you know, that we need to clean up around the place. I also got another one at the same time posted in the yard that we're gonna have a hearing on the property and probably put it, put a lien against the house for cleaning up rubbish and everything around. And I tried to talk to Bridget and come down and talk to her, and she said, well, you're not the property owner. I can't talk to you. I said, the property owner is dead. You know, so it's kind of hard to talk to him. But anyway, I said, I'll take care of the place. I've known, the Rainey family for a long time. And I lived in the house up until just a couple of years ago. So it was, me taking care of it. And now I've moved over in Durham section of town, and I don't get over as much as I need to. But the other thing was they also mowed the yard and sent me a bill for it. Well, my neighbor across the street, Mr. Spurlock, he keeps the yard mowed for me. When he mows his yard, he mows my yard. And the city had sent out a notice, and I got it. That wasn't no problem. And what? But about another week after it was back in the rain season, and Ben went over and mowed it. Well, here comes, a few weeks later, they come back, the city mowed. And I asked Ben, I said, Ben, did you mow the yard? He said, no, I didn't. I said, oh no, here we go. So I got a bill in then from the city for $180, and I'm like, this is not right. So I come down and try to talk to Bridget and about all this, and she's just like, no, I can't talk to you. That's against the rules of the state of Texas. And, of course, I'm thinking to myself, we're in Commerce, Texas now, come on. I was born and raised here, So, I just had a little gripe, see if we could, do something about it. I'm willing to cooperate. I know the little place needs to be cleaned up, because I'm not there as much as I used to. And I, worked around the old house and, worked on stuff. And I do need to clean it, but I try to tell Bridget, I'm willing to cooperate, go along with you, that's no problem. But, it's been hot out, kinda hard to get out and work in this heat, and everything, so. I was waiting till it cooled off, and I told her when it cools off a little bit, I'll get over there and go picking up and doing things. So, that's kinda where I'm at right now with it, is just trying to, resolve this bill on the mowing, because Mr. Spurlock took care of it. And also, on this other, going and putting a lien against the house that I just can't see. And at the time, I did call up, Gene's son, which Gene, the man that passed away, and his son, and Rick, he said, I can't be there on the 21st or anything. He's gone, like out of the country, and is on vacation for a couple of weeks. So he can't be back here till the 22nd. So I said, I'll go up and see what I can do to talk to these guys and see if we can, resolve something here. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with it.
Okay. I appreciate you coming and addressing the council tonight, sir.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the audience that wishes to address the council? Giving you the opportunity, Mr. Higgins.
First thing I'd like to do is well, everybody knows who I am. Y'all do anyway. First thing I'd like to do is I'd like to praise the chief and his men for the work they've done on North Neal, keeping the semi-trucks and the speeding down when they're there. It's improved greatly. The semi-trucks have dropped from 50 a week to 5 a week, which is marvelous. It's great. The speeders is another story, and we'll work on that a different time, but I thank the chief for everything that you've done out there, everything that's been going on out there. Second, I'd like to have stop signs, excuse me. I'd like to have stop signs put on every cross street on North Neal, and there's only 3 that actually cross North Neal. Again, I'm pleading with the council for speed humps and stop signs. I know y'all got a problem with the money on that, but they're not really that expensive. The police can't be there 24/7, but stop signs and speed humps can be. You don't have to pay somebody to be out there. They're there for one cost, one time. That's all I got this time around.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Higgins. Do we have anybody else who wishes to address the council this evening? You are certainly welcome to stay, Mr. Higgins. There being none, let's move on to item number 6, council comments. Pursuant to the Texas Local Government Code 551.0415B, the purpose of this section is to allow the mayor and each city council member the opportunity to announce city events, community interest, and request that items be placed on the future city council agenda. Do we have any comments from Councilman Henry?
I have nothing.
Councilman Muller?
I'd like to offer my time to Chief Belitz about the National Night Out, if you'd like to. Great.
My name's Catherine Curlis. I'm the public safety intern with the Commerce Police and Fire Departments. A lot of time and effort has been put into National Night Out this year. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am to see the event happen. We're going to have an abundance of inflatables, food. It's a free event for families to attend. It's only been made possible this year by collaborating with businesses and individuals in the community. The biggest goal of this event, of course, we want to facilitate opportunities for families to make memories together, but to be able to bring law enforcement together with the community is really important to us. Another thing that we've incorporated into the event this year is a food drive. Since we're expecting 500 to 600 people to attend the event, it's the perfect opportunity to have not only us give back to them, but for them to give back to the community as well. So we are asking attendees of the event to bring 2 canned goods, and we're going to have 3 food pantries at the event with representatives from the Commerce Food Pantry, the Lions Pantry, which is located on campus, and the Bread of Life food pantries. So we're very excited for the event. There's still lots that's going to be going on as far as a helicopter landing and a couple other exciting things that I don't want to give away. I would love to see you all come and bring your family with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We appreciate it. Councilman Thompson,
Nothing at this time.
did you mention CLI?
Oh. I would like to thank all of those that attended the Commerce Leadership garage sale last Saturday. It seems like forever. It took a while. A lot of people donated to that. A lot of people brought that, made that possible. If you can believe it, we had a gym completely full of items. We did extremely well, and I think it was a very good service to our community. We got great feedback from the community, hoping that we would do this in years to come.
Thank you very much. Councilman Ayers.
I have nothing at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 7, consideration of an ordinance amending ordinance number 2022-15, which adopted the fiscal year 2022-2023 fiscal year 2023 budget, providing for the adoption of amendments to the FY 2023 budget thereto as set forth in Exhibit A, and providing for an effective date. Ms. Campbell, Finance Director.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I hope that we'll make this quick this evening. So the amendments that we would like to suggest for the FY 2023 fiscal year budget, that's the fiscal year budget that we are currently living in, that has approximately 11 days left of the fiscal year. I'm going to start with our general fund. So our general fund, we adopt a budget for the general fund at the fund level. So overall, at the fund level, I'm anticipating that we are going to finish the fiscal year still within budget, but we still had just a couple of items that I felt were significant enough that I felt like we should do an amendment to the budget, just because they really kind of skewed things out of place. The first one would be in the Department of Community Development for the line item of contractor services. The adopted budget amount was for $50,000, but I'm asking for an adjustment of $222,000 to give us an adjusted budget amount of $272,000. This is because we use Bureau Veritas to do the majority of our inspections, and this is directly related to the inspections that were done for the ISD's projects. So these are pass-through expenses, meaning we have the revenue already offsetting it. But because it was such a large amount and it really kind of skewed this line out of budget, I feel like it's only fair that we not really skew their line item and really kind of screw up that whole department's budget because of these 3 major projects that the ISD had done. We didn't have a markup. We did a pass-through. So whatever that invoice was, that's what we billed the ISD. We've already gotten payment for those invoices. They're not outstanding. The second thing in the general fund is in the governmental affairs department, specifically for the CSLFRF expenses. This is directly related to the ARPA funds, the federal funds. Originally, we were going to be transferring funds into our grant fund after we completed our audit The auditors felt that it was best to keep it in the general fund and transfer revenue in. And so because of that, I would like to, where there was no budget before, add the budget in now. So we spent $18,000 for script, which is allowed for ARPA funds. And also, we spent another $5,000 for the actual portion of the audit that was related to this grant. And so that's for the total of $23,000. So that's all of the adjustments for our general fund. In our public utility fund, we have a couple more adjustments than just the two. I would like to adjust our revenue. So all of the funds in our public utility account, all of the adjustments are related to the Sulphur River transmission leak. Some of the leak, or the expenses that I'm asking for, are prior to the big blowout that we had, and some of the funds that I'm asking for is when it finally blew and we had to do the temporary fix. Okay, so the temporary fix cost $409,000 and some change, and we can use the remaining portion of that ARPA funds that we had. We can use the remaining portion of that to cover that project. Okay, so I have transferred that into the public utility fund, which is where you see an adjustment to the revenue of that $409,000. So that's a revenue increase, because I feel like it's important, even though typically we do not do a budget adjustment to revenue, I feel like it's important to show that we are offsetting a large majority of this expense with revenue, okay? So increasing the revenue, and all of this will happen in the water department, okay? So the transmission line leak was $421,000, and that is a line item. That's just the name of the line item. $409,000 went to a specific contractor. The rest of it was very small, you know, the water pallets that we had for our citizens, some other small things that were not to that one specific contractor that we would not be able to get reimbursement for. Engineering services, an increase to the budget for $40,000. That is typically what we pay Hayter throughout the year. So this is what we paid Hayter to help us fix this transmission line leak, to get their emergency assistance. Machine and implement maintenance, to increase that line item for $40,000. While it was leaking and while we were going through the process of trying to design a repair and trying to engineer a repair and trying to do everything that we could to get a permanent fix going, we had a pump out there that we had to rent, that had diesel costs, that had a weekly rental cost, and that's what the majority of all of these other costs are. And these are things that we were not expecting at the beginning of the year. And so, yes, we do budget for one-off situations, but this one-off situation really kind of blew their budget out of the water, which is why I feel like it's only necessary that we account for it, in our council minutes, and that we're transparent about it. The other thing that's really adjusted is the chemical supplies. Because there was a leak, you know, we are having to pump so much more water from the water treatment plant, which means we're having to put in more chemicals through the water treatment plant, which means we're having to purchase more chemicals than we typically would throughout the year, which is why we're having to ask for an increase on the chemical supplies. On the well maintenance, that's probably the only line item that is not directly related to the Sulphur River transmission line, and that's just because we had, throughout the summer months and throughout the winter months, we had some wells that needed more repairs than necessary. It is part of our CIP to work on some wells and to get them more operational than just kind of having somebody come out and fix them whenever they go down. Any questions on the Public Utility Fund and its adjustments before we move on to the much more minor funds? Okay. So the minor funds are funds that when we are going through the budget, we do our best to estimate at the time of budget, and then we usually true them up at the end. So on the debt service fund, this is where we make our bond payments out of. And so at the time of the budget, we knew we were going to be going out for the Series 2023 bond, and Hilltop gave us at the time of the budget what our estimated payments would be. And then after the bond finally sells, which is usually in the October timeframe, October-November timeframe, then I can true up what that actual payment is. And so this adjustment of $62,000 is just a true up of what the actual debt payment is in that fund. In Fund 9, and I'm going to say in Fund 9 and Fund 32, these are directly related. This is for the project that you approved for us to upgrade the AV system in the council chambers. And if you'll remember, we decided to split it between the Court Technology Fund and the Capital Projects Fund. It's going to split between 2 fiscal years. And so we had to make a 50% down payment, and so we did that in September. And so I didn't want to put the entire project, 100% of the project, in this fiscal year, knowing that some of it's going to live in next fiscal year. And so $30,000 in the Capital Project Fund, and then $3,900 in the Court Technology Fund. And I went ahead and adjusted the budget for FY 2024 to show the other 50% in both of these funds, so that when we finalize the project, and the project is supposed to be finalized by January, the beginning of January, we won't have to do a budget adjustment again. It will just be in the budget and it will be done. And then the final adjustments that we have is for the recreation fund. Okay, so I'm adjusting the revenue for basketball, and this is the invoice that we have sent to the Boys and Girls Club. And it correlates with some of the basketball expenses that we have had at the beginning of the year. This is mainly due to us paying for some of the referees in basketball, and then we invoice the Boys and Girls Club at the end of the season. I'm not sure if they have paid that invoice yet, but we have sent them, and I believe that they have sent it in for processing, is the last I've heard. The other small items that you see for concession stand, baseball, and a small balance in basketball, this is mainly things that don't fall underneath the Boys and Girls contract. These are like pieces of equipment that we need to replace, concession equipment that needed to be fixed, things like that. So these are things that are not directly related to actually running the sports and running the personnel. It's really just, hey, we need to get this equipment replaced, we need to get this equipment replaced. But because we had a zero budget for these line items, we need to increase the line items to show what we've actually spent. Does anybody have any questions on any of these budget adjustments that I can answer for you?
Any questions for Ms. Campbell?
That's all I have. Thank you.
There being none, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we adopt an ordinance authorizing the budget adjustments to the fiscal year 2023 budget as presented.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 8, receive a report, conduct a public hearing, and consider action on an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2023-2024, fiscal year 2024 operating budget. Mr. Lisenby, City Manager.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to present this tonight. As you're aware, there's been a great deal of effort and energy that has been spent in putting this budget together and get it to the point where we can present it to the public, conduct a public hearing, and then hopefully move towards adoption. And so I wrestled with a couple of options of what to do when we get to this point, because we've had lots of meetings and lots of conversations about this. And so I didn't want to belabor the point with a whole nother couple of hours of budget workshop. But I also don't want to rush through and appear that we're just rubber stamping things. And so I've prepared a minimal presentation, but I do want to make some comments about this budget, both for those that are in the room and those that are watching remotely, so that we can be transparent about what we are proposing to do in this budget. As we always talk about, and my staff will be shocked to find that I'm going to repeat myself, anytime we talk about the budget, I want to accentuate the fact that the budgets that we build go hand in hand with the planning that we're doing. We're not randomly picking numbers and creating budgets. We're trying to implement and develop plans and move this city in strategic directions. And so there's a couple of principles that guide us through this process. The first of which is that the city is a service organization. We exist to serve the community. We serve the citizens and the visitors of this community, and everything we do at its heart is a service. And so that influences how we approach our jobs, but it also approaches how we write budgets, because most service organizations are very heavy on the personnel side. And so you'll see later that our budget is stacked pretty heavy on the personnel side, and that's because we are a service organization. Second principle is that every dollar we spend is someone else's dollar. We have attempted to grow money trees and have not been successful yet. And so we have to ask the community for resources that we then use to provide services to the community, and we recognize that it's their dollars. And finally, the most valuable thing that we have is trust. We can replace equipment. We can actually replace dollars. We can even replace people. I'm replaceable. Trust is incredibly difficult to replace. And so as we build budgets, as we provide services, we want to build and maintain trust with the community. We've developed, or are still working on, the pieces of a strategic plan. As we mentioned, budget and planning go hand in hand. And so our mission statement talks about why we're here and what we exist to do. And so for now, the mission statement that we use is we work together to build and maintain a community of the highest quality for present and future generations. So as we build these budgets, it's with this mission in mind. The vision, if you'll recall, we did a workshop off-site, brought a consultant in, and this is our attempt to capture the results of that. The City of Commerce, who do we want to be when we grow up? We will be a vibrant, self-sustaining community where families can put down roots in the dirt and grass of a rural setting, raise their children safely, pursue a quality education, and still have access to the amenities of the DFW Metroplex without being surrounded by concrete. And finally, we look at the values of how we do our jobs, and we try to be responsive. We meet citizens' needs in a timely manner. We attempt to be effective. We meet citizen needs completely the first time. That's the goal. We don't always hit that goal, and so we try to be accountable. And so we measure performance to approve and repeat results. So having said all of that, the council identified 5 goals and objectives in this most recent retreat. And so within our budget and within the efforts that we'll be doing over the next few years, we're going to work to develop new revenue streams to support the community. We'll work to develop and maintain sustainable infrastructure that corresponds with growth. We will establish and maintain a long-term identity for the community. We'll work to improve the quality of life and to improve the appearance of the city. And so these objectives, we try to weave them in and out of the budgets as we write them and adopt them. What I'm going to do tonight is try to quickly hit a summary of the work that we do, the people who serve, and the resources that we use. Just as a snapshot of this budget so the community can understand how we're proposing to use the resources that they've given us. Lest anyone think that we spend a tremendous amount of money on expensive graphic designs, this is my fabulous work of art by hand. And so everybody should be amazed at the artistic prowess that I'm demonstrating here.
There will be an auction later.
There will be an auction later as a fundraiser. But the core budget for our city, the services that we provide, is $14,871,423. And I'll generally categorize that into several categories. And its most basic fundamental thing that we do as we serve is public safety. The foundation of what we do as a community is provide or attempt to provide public safety for our citizens and our visitors. And the budget for public safety is $4,400,669, and that's 30% of the total general fund and utility budget. After we do public safety, then we have to work on public infrastructure. Public infrastructure is water, sewer, streets, and trash. And those are fundamental services that we have to provide to the community. The budget for those services is $7,727,590, or 52% of the budget is spent on infrastructure. And then quality of life are those things that we're attempting to make life better, easier, or improving for the citizens of our community. Those activities have a budget of $1,108,869, or 7% of the budget. And then supporting all of those activities are the administrative services of this city. That's the staff and the services that we provide to help everybody else do their job. And so that budget is $1,634,295, or 11%. And so it's interesting to note that within the general fund budget, 70% of that budget is staff. Salaries, benefits, and related expenses to the people that do this work. 70% of the general fund is staff. The utilities, 23% of that budget is staff, and 46% of that budget is contract services. So there is a significant portion of both budgets that is just supporting the people and the services that we provide. Within the general fund, salaries and wages, again, are 70%. Everything else falls within that pie chart. Within the Public Utilities Fund, salaries is 22.8%, professional services is 19%. The miscellaneous expenses are going to be a combination of buying water and paying for trash services. And so the bulk of these both budgets reflect the services that we provide to the community. Talking about the people who serve, one of the big points and the talking points of this budget as we wrote it is looking to provide for the men and women that serve this community, the men and women of your staff, the police officers who are on the street, who are responding to 911 calls, the firefighters that are responding to fires, even though it's 105 degrees outside, they're still suited up and fighting fires that are over 1,000 degrees. These are the people that serve. Within the water and sewer department, they're on call 24 hours a day. Regardless of the weather, they come out, they crawl in the hole, they work to repair those services, and all of the support staff that makes that possible. Those employees deserve a fair market wage. And so Ms. Campbell does an excellent job of surveying the region. We are not comparing ourselves to cities within the Metroplex. That literally is an entirely different world. But looking at cities our size and our makeup in the region of East Texas and Northeast Texas, we compare the jobs we have to other jobs in other cities of comparable nature, and we determine what is a market wage, what is a fair wage for people doing that job. And then we evaluate all of our staff positions, and we identify when employees fall out or go below that minimum wage. We want to bring them up. And so this budget has provisions for a number of our employees that had fallen out of that market wage to correct that and bring them back into a competitive wage. It also looks to address inflation and the cost of living. We are not attempting, and I don't know that we will ever attempt, to keep pace with national inflation, but we do keep an eye on what is the cost of living for our staff that serve this community. Are we reflective of the costs that they have to be here in this community and continue to serve? And so we've proposed a 3% across the board cost of living adjustment for those staff so that we can continue to keep pace as much as possible. And finally, we've introduced a new certification pay program. What we're proposing is to incentivize staff to take the time, take the effort to grow their knowledge, grow their skills, and grow their abilities to serve this community. It's a personal position of mine. I may or may not be rubbing off on some of the staff, but I don't particularly want to reward someone with a large raise just because they successfully avoided getting fired. And so tenure and the ability to be here for a long time doesn't automatically guarantee that you're going to get nice big raises every year. Compensation should also reflect the knowledge, the skills, and the ability that you bring to this community, how well you serve this community. And there hasn't been a good incentive for employees to invest the time and energy to obtain new license, to obtain new certifications, to grow their skill set because they didn't receive any additional compensation for that effort. This certification pay program changes that. And so we're looking to incentivize employees that put in the effort. They can gain additional salary, they can get new compensation by growing their skill set. And so this is working to take care of the people who serve our community. And finally, the resources that we use. Within the general fund, 68.5% of the revenue or the resources that we use to provide services to this community come in the form of 3 taxes. Property tax revenue is about 42% of our revenue. Sales tax represents 20%, and franchise tax represents about 6%. Franchise tax are for those utility companies like the power company, the cable company, the phone company. They're using public facilities and public rights of way to conduct for-profit business. And since they're using the public's land and space to do their business, they pay us a franchise tax. And so that represents about 6% of the revenue for the general fund. Within the Public Utilities Fund, 93% is charges for service. This fund is not supported by taxes, and so the fees and the charges that are levied are based on the consumption or the use of those services. Water revenue represents 36%, wastewater represents 36%, and solid waste represents 20% of the revenues for the Public Utility Fund. And so that's where we get the resources to do this work, is from the citizens and from the customers. Finally, within the Public Utility Fund, we are talking about a minor rate adjustment. And so for water and sewer utility customers on the residential side, 67% of our households don't use more than 4,000 gallons a month. That's a startling statistic, but the vast majority of our residential homes use very low volumes of water. They're going to expect about $1 a month change. That's about 1% change in their bill. 28% of the customers in our residential category use between $6,000 a month and $10,000 a month. They're going to see $2 to $4 a month and change to their bills. Commercial customers that use more water will clearly see a higher charge, and then we have industrial customers that use a significant volume of water, and they pay for that water as well. And so finally, I'll close with the ask. What we've put within this proposed budget is a proposal to adopt an increase in the tax rate of about 3 cents. So the current tax rate is 0.76 and change, and we're proposing to increase that rate to 0.79 and change on the tax rate. And that would generate an additional $173,000 of revenue. So if we adopt the same tax rate that we had last year, then we give up or we let go of potential of $173,000 in revenue. And that money is what we're using to pay for increased compensation to keep our staff in a competitive wage and pay for the certification program. And so we're asking that the proposed budget be adopted as presented to support and to include revenue from that tax rate. Mayor, I believe this calls for a public hearing, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that the public or the council may have.
Council first, any questions for Mr. Lisby? There being none, it is 6:45, and I open for public hearing. There being none, at 6:45, I close the public hearing. May I have a motion?
Move that we adopt the budgets as presented to the city and to the council. This budget will raise more revenue from property taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $744,724, which is a 18.9% increase from last year's budget. The property tax revenue will be raised from the property added to the tax roll this year is $59,250.
Is there a second?
Second.
This requires a roll call vote. Councilman Henry. Aye. Councilman Muller.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Ayers.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 9, consideration and possible action of an ordinance ratifying the property tax revenue increase reflected in the adopted fiscal year 2024.
Mayor?
Mayor,
I'm sorry, did I miss something?
Mr. Mayor, could I interrupt just for a second on the last vote? It's important for you to register your vote as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then aye for me.
Thank you.
Yeah. I apologize, Charles. Where was I? Item number 9, consideration and possible action of an ordinance ratifying the property tax revenue increase reflected in the adopted fiscal year 2024 operating budget as a result of the city requiring more revenue from property tax than in the fiscal year 2023 budget. Mr. Lisenby.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to present this item. I will very briefly attempt to explain some of what's going on in this ordinance and in this language. If a citizen were to open up the proposed budget as it's been presented and look at the budgeted property tax revenue for this budget and compare it to the budgeted tax revenue of last year's fiscal budget and subtract those two out, you will not get $744,724. This number is required language from a calculation that is required by the state of Texas that does an interesting form of calculus. And so it looks at the previous year's revenue compared to a previous certified tax roll, compared to a new tax rate, compared to a new certified tax roll, and those numbers don't match. And so within all of that calculus are some tweaks and some adjustments, and it spits out this number. But you will not find $744,724 in our proposed budget. But this is technically compliant with the requirements of state law. And so we present this ordinance to you for your consideration, and staff recommends approval of the ordinance as presented.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being none, may I have a motion?
I recommend that the council approve an ordinance ratifying the adoption of a budget which will require more revenue from property tax than last year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This also requires a roll call vote. Councilman Henry.
Aye.
Councilman Muller.
Aye.
Aye for me. Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Ayers.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 10, receive a report, conduct a public hearing, and possible action on an ordinance adopting the tax rate of .798909 per $100 of assessed valuation as of January the 1st, 2023 for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Lisenby.
Mayor, Council, thank you for adopting the proposed budget. And so in accordance with state law, once a budget is adopted, then we can consider for adoption a tax rate that would be necessary to support that budget. And so staff is proposing a tax rate of 0.798909 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. That consists of two components. The first component is the maintenance and operation tax rate, which we're proposing at 0.567036 per $100 of valuation, and it includes an interest and sinking tax rate to support the debt that the city has incurred. That tax rate is proposed at 0.238173 per $100 of valuation, for a total rate of 0.798909, and this represents a 6.9% increase in the taxes paid on a home of $100,000 in value. And so we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from Mr. Lisenby?
That's different than this right here?
Okay, the language that is required by the state in the adoption indicates that the tax rate is a 5.55% increase. And so if you take the state law that controls how much we can adjust the budget is only on the maintenance and the operation side. And so the maintenance and operation rate is being adjusted by 7.9 something percent. But the debt service rate is set based on the debt service that's required for our obligations. You put those two together, the total rate compared to last year's rate is going up by 5.55%.
Okay. Are there any other questions? This does require a public hearing, so at 6:51, we are open for public hearing. There being nobody coming forward, at 6:52, I close the public hearing. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of the tax rate of 0.798909 per 100 of assessed valuation, which is effectively a 5.55% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This also requires a roll call vote. Councilman Henry.
Aye.
Councilman Muller.
Aye.
Aye for me. Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Ayers.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 11, receive a report, conduct a public hearing, discussion, and possible action on an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Commerce, Texas, accepting the fiscal year 2024 capital improvement plan. Mr. Lisenby.
Mayor and council, during the budget workshop that we had earlier this year, we presented a capital improvements plan that is projected for major capital expenditures in the next couple of years. We focused primarily on street reconstruction. We continue to invest most of our capital dollars in the design improvements of street systems within our community. There are also some projects in the utility fund that were being considered for the fiscal 24 period. And so within the general fund, the street construction that we're looking at, we're currently under design for East Sterling Hart and Oak Lane. And we have funding to begin construction for that project. But in fiscal 24, we're looking for an additional $1,750,000 that will conclude the funding necessary for those two streets. And we're looking to begin design in this next year for South Monroe Street. And so that $2,750,000 is the CIP for fiscal 24. As a reminder, when we look at a multi-year plan, you're only adopting 1 year within that multi-year plan. So we're looking at fiscal 24. Then within the utility fund, we're looking at $1,150,000. The projects have changed in the utility fund. When we last looked at this plan, there was a 60-home subdivision that we've been in negotiations with the developer to put in homes, first-time home buyer homes on the eastern edge of town. And so we had funding in the capital improvements plan for us to participate in the water and sewer lines necessary to support that subdivision. That developer has withdrawn from the project and is no longer pursuing that. They actually have that land listed for sale. They're trying to divest themselves. Not because Commerce is not an attractive location, but they're liquidating their business, and so they're walking away from projects all over the place. And so the $1 million of funding that we had in the budget to work on infrastructure to support that subdivision, we left it in the budget because the wastewater treatment plant has significant issues. As you're aware, we've been working on the water plant for a couple of years. When I first got here, surprisingly 3 years ago, we were working on a major issue at the wastewater treatment plant. There is more work that needs to be done. And so in a future workshop, we'll be taking you out there and letting you see some of the projects that need to take place. But for now, the CIP plan includes funding to begin the rehabilitation of the wastewater treatment plant and to start design on a new ground storage tank at the water treatment plant. And so that's $1,150,000. That is the CIP as it's presented, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being none, we are required to open a public hearing, so at 6:56, I open for a public hearing. There being no one come forward, at 6:56, I close the public hearing. May I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve fiscal year 2024 capital improvement plan.
Second.
May I have a motion and a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, first reading, discussion and possible action on an ordinance amending ordinances 2021-08 and ordinance 2021-22 to reflect modified City of Commerce solid waste fees. Mr. Lisenby.
I will defer to Ms. Jamie Campbell.
Ms. Campbell.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. So, okay, so when we have accepted the new rate schedule with Mary Miller and City Sanitation, and they put I believe they increased their rates at 4.5%. We did not, and we are not proposing a rate change to our residential rates. But I did take some time to look at our commercial rate schedule. And when I did that, I realized that our commercial rate schedule, the rates were all over the place. Some of them with her new rate schedule, the city would be actually losing money. And to avoid our solid waste fees and us losing money in our public utility fund, which over the last few years we've been struggling to make it to where we're even breaking even and becoming compliant in our fund balance policy. What I've done is I went through all of these and I put a 5% markup on them. So what that did is it actually, some of the rates actually decreased from the original one, some increased, but now it will be a universal 5% markup from whatever Mary Miller's chart is to what our rate fee is. It'll be universal and it will just be from one to the other. Some of them had a 12%, some of them had negative percents. I mean, it was just all over. So this will just make it much more universal and follow it all the way through. The daily rates are one of those that actually decreased, about 50 cents a day. So, any questions? And this is the first reading. We'll have a second reading in next council meeting.
Are there any questions for Ms. Campbell?
Thank you.
There being none, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we Accept an ordinance amending ordinances 2021-08 and ordinance 2021-22 to reflect modified City of Commerce solid waste fees on the first reading.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 13, first reading. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance amending ordinances 2022-19 to reflect modified City of Commerce water and wastewater rates for FY 2024. Mr. Lisenby.
Mayor and Council, as we discussed in the budget presentation, when the City Council identified some of their strategic objectives for our community looking into the future years, having and maintaining sustainable infrastructure was one of the components within that. And so we continue to invest in the infrastructure and the systems within our public utilities, primarily on the water and the sewer side. And so the rates that we have been using within this current fiscal year have been adequate to carry on that charge. But as we looked at some of the additional work that is ahead of us to remain compliant with TCEQ and to resolve some of the aging infrastructure issues, there are additional projects that we'll have to undertake. And so this is a minor rate adjustment that would allow us to continue to address those issues and maintain a positive fund balance in compliance with our policy. And so as a reminder, when you're looking at water rates and sewer rates, there are two components. The first is a fixed charge that's based on the size of your water meter. It's also known as a demand charge. And so if a citizen doesn't use a drop of water, they still have a water charge because there's a meter attached to our system, and we have to have the ability to meet that demand whenever they need the water. And we have costs that are incurred to make sure that we can always meet that demand when they need it. And so there are fixed costs to every account. We have not adjusted any of the fixed rates for our water or our sewer accounts in this proposal. The second component is a consumption rate. Based on how much water you use, it changes how much you pay. And there are tiered consumptions for residential and commercial customers. So the more water you use, that rate actually increases. And so the adjustment that we're proposing is on the consumption charge. For residential customers, if you'll recall, we said that 68% of our customers use 4,000 gallons a month or less. Studies show that 4,000 to 5,000 gallons a month is your basic domestic household needs. That's just the basic water you need in your home. I don't know what the exact number is now, but I believe at the school system, over 70% of the kids qualify for free or reduced lunches. That reflects that we have a lot of our residential homes that have kids that have lower income situations. From the census data, 36% of the households in our community have an annual household income of $25,000 a year or less. So there is a significant portion of our community that lives in hard economic times. And so this 4,000 gallon tier is what we call a lifeline rate. We want to preserve the cost of that basic domestic household use so that the cost doesn't grow for those customers. And so that charge was $3.50 per thousand. We're requesting it go to $3.75 per thousand as part of this rate adjustment. All other tiers of consumption, we're requesting that it goes up 50 cents for every 1,000 gallons used. And so that results in a very low impact to the low-income families within our community. But it also recognizes that the commercial and industrial customers that use larger volumes of water, they continue to pay more to support that use. On the sewer side, again, we did not change the base rate, but we are asking for 25 cents on the first tier of, or no, we left the first tier of sewer charge alone, and everything above that went 50 cents. And so this is an adjustment that allows us to continue to invest in the sustainability of our infrastructure and maintain positive fund balances. And so we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being none, may I have a motion?
I move that we approve this on the first reading of the water and sewer rate ordinance.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 14. Discussion and possible action on a resolution awarding the contract for health insurance benefits to Allstate, awarding the employer dental insurance benefits to UNUM, awarding the employee vision insurance benefits to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, awarding the employee benefits for life disability insurance to Blue Cross/Dearborn, awarding the employee benefit of telehealth services to First Stop Health, awarding the employee benefit of mental telehealth services to Support Line, awarding a contract of COBRA through National Benefit Services, awarding a contract for health savings account services through Optum Bank, and authorizing city manager or his designee to execute all necessary documentation related to this resolution for fiscal year 2024. Molly Jacobson, Director of Administrative Services.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. As the City Manager mentioned earlier in the meeting, a majority of our budget is tied up in personnel. A large percentage of that, aside from salaries, is the benefits that the city absorbs on behalf of our employees related to premiums and benefits. The way that process works for us every year is myself and my department and our staff works with our employee benefits insurance broker, which is Mrs. Sarah Alderman, and her staff, and we take our group, which is defined by all of our city employees and any dependents that employees elect to carry via payroll deduction in our group. So we take the City of Commerce group out to market, and health insurance, vision, dental, short-term, long-term disability are able to bid on us as a group and let us know what our rates will move to, because as we all know, the rates don't tend to stay the same from year to year. So this year we made some pretty big changes. When Jamie starts working on the budget in the spring, she goes in and projects an increase kind of based on historical numbers on what we anticipate the increase in premiums to be. So she projects that, or she puts in her budget about 20%. So that number she puts in, as I mentioned, in the spring, we go out to market and we don't tend to get rates back from health insurance companies until late in the summer, and we present the budget to you all or have it out in the community and to you all mid-July. So it comes together pretty quickly. And she budgeted the 20% increase with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they came back with a premium increase at 37%. So that left us with some difficult choices, and as Howdy mentioned earlier, we take pride in the fact that we're able to absorb the premiums for benefits on behalf of our employees, but we're also conscientious of the fact that every dollar we spend is somebody else's dollar. So the 37% was not an option. So we looked at some other alternatives related to health insurance that was specifically tied to our health insurance premiums. One of the big complaints we get from our employees is PPO versus HMO networks. Our employees don't really like that, and one of our plans was tied up with a HMO network. So we looked at Allstate. You all have heard of Allstate. They've been in the insurance game as long as Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're a little bit newer to the health insurance game, but they've still been around since the 1930s, just like Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they came to us with a proposal at 14%, and we were able to move employee benefits for health insurance from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Allstate, and they have one network, so we were also able to accommodate our employees by getting away from that HMO versus PPO network. So that's all tied to health insurance. Some other changes we made is we had our Blue Cross Blue Shield dental and vision insurance. We stayed with them for vision insurance. They held those rates. Then dental insurance, we were actually able to make a better move to a group called UNUM. I know Greenville ISD works with UNUM, and they have a rollover benefit that was an added benefit we were able to offer to our employees. Short-term, long-term disability, we kept that contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Couple other things, if you all remember last year, You guys added into the budget a telehealth service for mental health services for our employees. What was kind of interesting is out of this last legislative session came a mandate for your public safety employees that you offer that benefit as a government to your employees. So it was great that we added that in last year. We kept that in the budget with SupportLink this year. We kept services with First Stop Health for telehealth services. And then we made a move for our Task and Cobra services. We moved them from Task to a group called NBS, and there was actually some cost savings there. So this resolution approves contracts with all of those groups for all of those benefits, and we're just seeking your approval for those contracts.
Are there any questions for Ms. Jacobson? There being none, may I have a motion?
Make a motion that we adopt a resolution awarding the contract for our health insurance benefits to Allstate, awarding the employee dental insurance benefits to Unum, awarding the employee vision insurance benefits to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, awarding the employee benefits for life and disability insurance to Blue Cross Dearborn, awarding the employee benefit of telehealth services for First Stop Health, awarding the employee benefit of mental telehealth services support line, awarding a contract for Cobra through National Benefit Services, awarding a contract for health savings account services through Optum Bank, and awarding and authorizing the city manager to designate to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 15, first reading and ordinance of the City of Commerce amending Chapter 22, Buildings and Building Regulations. Articles 12, rental properties, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. Mr. Lisenby.
Mayor and Council, before I dive into this, I just want to thank you for approving that last item. It is a very high priority of ours that we provide for our employees and ways for our employees to provide for their families. And in this health insurance environment, that becomes more and more difficult every year. And so we want to thank you for recognizing the work of Molly and her staff and this team because those benefits are important that we offer to our employees. For this item, in our last workshop, we talked about the city's current programs and regulations for what we call residential safety inspections, or RSIs. I believe it's 65% of the single-family homes in this community are rental properties, which is another startling statistic for our community. And so when you have that high of a census for residential rental properties, there is the opportunity for, we'll say, less than stellar landlords to have rental structures that don't meet basic life safety standards. And so the city adopted a program to create these RSI inspections so that we can confirm and make sure that the rental units that our citizens are being asked to live in meet those basic life safety standards. And part of the leverage that we have is that if a structure does not pass an RSI, we do not provide water service. If we do not provide water service, the landlord can't use that as a rental property to generate revenue, and so it incentivizes them to fix those structures and bring them up to at least basic life safety standards. Well, in the implementation of that program, we found two things. One, administratively, it was becoming more and more complex to administer that program in an effective manner, and two, we found that landlords have found a way to get around that program and never have their properties inspected and never have to worry about passing an RSI. And so the proposal that we have in front of you does not remove the RSI program. We feel it's still an important public policy issue. It changes how we administer that program, and it closes some loopholes for those property owners that have been able to avoid inspections. And so we're presenting it to you for first reading, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being none, may I have a motion?
Make a motion that we pass on the first reading.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 16, second reading, discussion and possible action on an ordinance of the City of Commerce City Council amending Chapter 62 offenses by removing Section 62-2 curfew hours for minors from the City of Commerce Code of Ordinances, and providing for an effective date. Chief Belitz.
Council, asking that you amend the ordinance to chapter 62, removing curfew for minors due to House Bill 1819, which removes our enforcement of that ordinance for all cities and counties. This doesn't include emergency declarations, emergency management situations. Those fall into other laws that we enforce. You have the option to leave it if you want to, but we just can't enforce it.
Are there any questions for the chief? There being none, may I have a motion?
I move that we approve this ordinance on the first reading. Second reading, excuse me.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Item 17, second reading, discussion and possible action on an ordinance granting to Farmers Electric Cooperative Incorporated, a Texas corporation, and its successors for a non-exclusive right, privilege, and franchise, including all necessary and required easements to conduct the business of acquiring, installing, constructing, maintaining, using, and operating an electric power utility system to the City of Commerce, Texas, and the inhabitants thereof in all areas of the City of Commerce, Texas, in which Farmers Electric has the right to serve, granting the rights to use and occupy present, future streets, avenues, alleys, roads, parkways, highways, sidewalks, right-of-way, easements, and other public grounds and places of the city for the construction, operation, and maintenance of an electric power utility system by the aforesaid electric cooperative, prescribing the condition, restrictions, obligations, and limitations under which such franchise shall be exercised, providing for a fee or charge to be paid to the city for the use of the streets, alleys, and other public ways, grounds, and places, providing that it shall be in lieu of other fees and charges, providing for savings, repealing severability clauses, providing for an effective date of this ordinance, and providing for the publication of the caption hereof. Mr. Lisenby.
If you need a glass of water, you're more than welcome to get one. Mayor, Council, this is the second reading. As we mentioned earlier in the budget discussion, whenever public utilities operate within the city limits, they are actually using public land to conduct their business. Within our streets, right-of-ways, and other rights of way, they're conducting private for-profit business within public lands. And so the franchise that we offer them recognizes and gives them permission to operate on public land, and it establishes the conditions by which they operate and the fees that they have to pay to us. We currently have a franchise agreement with Encore that provides electricity for the majority of our community, but Farmers Electric and their coverage area is also within select areas of our city limits, and so they're wanting to improve and increase the service they provide in those areas, and we did not have a franchise agreement with them. And so this closes that loophole. This is the second reading, and we're proposing and recommending adoption of this franchise agreement as presented.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being none, may I have a motion?
I move that we approve this adoption as presented.
Second. Yeah, on the second reading.
On the second reading.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 18, City Manager's Report.
Mayor, Council, recognizing that the gentleman that spoke in public comment is no longer here, the laws under which we operate for code enforcement are very much set in stone, and those processes, I'm sure our esteemed attorney will conclude, are quasi-judicial in nature. And so the city is exercising a form of its police power to take action against property owners, to require them and enforce them to upkeep and maintain their properties in compliance with those codes. And since we're taking judicial action against a property owner and enforcing action on their personal property, there are a lot of requirements placed on us as a government to protect the property owner and protect their constitutional rights. And so as such, we generally can't deal with someone that is not the owner of a property. This is a unique situation in which the owner of the property has passed, but I don't believe there are provisions in state law that allow us to be good old boys. And there may have been the propensity in the past to operate as the good old boy system, but we don't follow that system any longer. And sometimes people prefer the good old boy system instead. And so when we are taking strong enforcement action, we are going to follow the requirements of state law. And even though there is not a property owner to deal with, we can't make decisions with people that don't have demonstrated interest in those properties. And so we'll continue to look into this and move it forward. But the property in question is in an accelerated state of disrepair. And the neighborhood and the community around them deserves some protection. And so we'll continue to move this case forward. Ms. Campbell, do we have a finance update?
We will start with sales tax, and as of August 2023, we have surpassed our budgeted sales tax revenue and our 2022 sales tax revenue as well. With one more month remaining, I feel confident that we will hit 1.5 million in sales tax revenue, which is another big first for the City of Commerce. In 2018, it was the first year that Commerce reached a sales tax of $1 million. So to see this continued growth is really exciting. So in 5 years, to go from 1 million to 1.5, it's just exciting to kind of keep seeing that growth happen. So the top 10 categories, there's nothing abnormal that stands out. Yearly growth is as it should be for each kind of category. One thing I kind of looked at was if we're seeing any kind of big shifts. I did notice that accommodation and food services last year was maybe was 24% of our overall split, you know, so it was 24%. Now it's 26%. So I think it will be exciting to see where it is next year at this same time, if it's closer to 28, if it's closer to 30%. So we are kind of seeing that food service is kind of picking up in the overall scheme of things for us. So moving on to retail services, online shopping is slightly higher than it was in 2022, but it's still not as high as it was in 2021. The overall split between department stores, hardware stores, gasoline stations, it is very similar to where it was this time last year. There's no noticeable differences. So I see that trend. The only difference that I really saw is our fluctuation in online sales. And keep in mind now that baby products, some feminine hygiene products, those things don't have sales tax anymore. Just kind of curious to see how that will affect us. It will affect us a lot, not a lot. I don't know. Or maybe I only care. Accommodation and food services. in August of 2023. So in 2022, our full-service restaurants was 44%, and limited-service restaurants was 30%. So as we start seeing these new limited-service restaurants come in, we're starting to see it shifting to becoming more equal. So in August of this year, it was 37 and 37%. So they are definitely starting to see much more of an equal split between all the different options.
And if I may, some people may be tempted to see these numbers and assume that the limited service restaurants are taking business away from the full service restaurants. But if you'll notice at the bottom of that,
No.
the purple column continues to outpace the previous years. So the pie is getting bigger and the distribution of that pie is changing. So it's not necessarily that one group is taking away from the other. The entire economic level of activity is rising in the community.
Exactly. So where last year accommodation and food was only 24% of our overall sales tax for the year, and this year it's 26%. So we're seeing more people come to Commerce and spend their money, their sales tax money, on food and on accommodations. And that's what we want to see. We want to see people coming into Commerce because we have food services. So moving over into property tax. So we have reached 3.77 million of property tax revenue. That is 98% of our original budget. We've collected 42,000 in delinquent taxes and 33,000 in penalties and interest. So we all know it gets very complicated now that they've come out with a new 2022 certified tax roll, which is much less than last year's tax roll. And they're saying, well, this is your new certified tax roll, and it's very complicated. What's interesting is that the county says, well, because you have these delinquent payments, they use those delinquent payments and add them into the revenue that we received this year. And they say, well, now you're whole. So they say, oh, you've actually received like 102%. And so what they do is they say, your property tax next year, we're actually going to decrease it by 1% or 2% because you've actually received 102% collections. So thank you, county, for doing that for us. I appreciate it. Which is why you see on the interest and sinking, it's at 97.7, and it's not at the same percentage. It's just a little bit off. Any questions on property tax? Okay, well, that's all I have for you this evening.
Mayor, Council, I too planned on having Miss Catherine come up and talk about National Night Out, but she already did a fantastic job. Did anybody have any questions for Catherine or for Calais about National Night Out? As a reminder, they have an admission of 2 canned goods. As Catherine mentioned, that'll go to food pantries, but they don't intend on denying admission to anybody who's not able to provide those canned goods. I'll keep reminding you of this because we're having such great participation. Script, along with the City of Commerce Parks and Recreation and Superior Health, are providing congregate meals and bingo for seniors over the age of 60 at the First Baptist Church here in Commerce. We're also always looking for volunteers for that, so you can reach out to Script if you're interested in volunteering. That takes place from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., by the way.
I'm calling bingo next. I'm already at lunch.
Reason of itself to attend.
And I will add that if you're less than 60, you're still welcome to come and participate. However, you did not get free food and you cannot win prizes because they will beat you off with a stick. But you can come play and enjoy the social atmosphere.
So as we near the end of September, that is also the end of mosquito spraying season. So we are in our last week currently of mosquito spraying. As a reminder, that takes place at 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday. We still have the map available here at City Hall, and the map is also posted online. Should there be a need to extend spraying, the weather is still kind of ideal right now for mosquito season. So should there be a need to extend it, we're still testing every week. We'll test this week and next week for West Nile mosquitoes. So should there be a need to extend that, we'll share that information on social media. But for now, the plan is to discontinue spraying this week. North Texas Giving Day is this week, September 21st. We have several organizations within the City of Commerce and within the county that you can give to. No Kill Hunt County is a member. The Commerce Food Pantry, 88.9, and the Northeast Texas Children's Museum are all organizations that you can give to now or on Northeast Texas Giving Day through their website. Farmers Market also wraps up at the end of September. As a reminder, there will be no Farmers Market this coming weekend because the Bodark Bash takes place this weekend, Friday and Saturday. So no Farmers Market, but Farmers Market will wrap up for the last weekend, the following weekend in September. And that's all I have.
All right, Mayor, Council, we are always excited when we add new staff, but we are additionally excited that Mr. Jesse has joined our team. Gorzinski, I didn't completely botch it with my West Texas accent. Jesse is a veteran of our Navy and comes to us with previous previous experience in inspections. I botch a lot of things. Just wait. But along with the experience that he brings us as a veteran and as an inspector, we're looking forward to getting him out on the street. We're renewing a couple of licenses on his behalf, and then we should be able to start providing our own inspection services in the near future. And so we're very glad that he has joined our team, and we thank him for his service to our country. Projects updates. There's a lot going on, but I won't belabor the point. We were scheduled to open bids today for the first batch of street construction projects. We actually have contractors that are getting ready to submit bids. One of the contractors asked a really good question that required an answer by addendum. When you answer a question for one contractor, you've got to answer the question for all of the potential contractors. So we moved bid opening to tomorrow, and so we'll open bids tomorrow. As an interesting anecdote, I got a call, Charles, you may appreciate this one. One of the contractors that's looking to bid tomorrow had a younger member of his staff that was going over the instructions so that they were submitting their bid appropriately. And within the instructions, one copy of their bid has to be on CD. And the staff member didn't know what a CD was and was asking for clarification. So the contractor called me and asked if they could submit it on a thumb drive instead. We approved. They do not have to use a CD. But it was shocking that there are people out there in the world that don't know what a CD is. Our engineer recommended that we change it to 8-track next time we do a bid. So we should have bids to open tomorrow for street projects, and we'll update the council once we have that. We did open bids for the library reconstruction project. We had 2 bids that were submitted. Both were qualified bidders. Both were over our budget, but the low bid was just barely over the budget. And so we're currently going through a value engineering process to identify what we can change or alter within the scope of work to bring our budget down. We're very close, and so I would anticipate having a contract in front of council next month for us to award and get the project going at the library. Additionally, you may have heard the library board is working with a group called the Talker Foundation. They do transformation grants for small libraries, and they have an architect on their team, and they're working with the library board to write a grant to completely replace all of the furniture and redo the entire first floor, so that when our construction project is finished and they have their grand reopening, it's a full makeover of the first floor of the library. It's going to be very impressive when we get this project finished.
Do we know the results of the fundraiser?
The concert that they did. About $1,100 was raised at the charity concert that was held in the building.
Thank
It was a good time was had by all. Finally, the animal shelter continues to be in process. Talking with the contractor there. If you'll recall, we're delivering this project in a little bit different manner called design build. And so we actually hired and selected the construction company at the very beginning of the project. And so we've finished design of the process. All the construction drawings are finished, and the contractor is wrapping up his pricing so that he can give us what's called a guaranteed maximum price. And so they'll be submitting a guaranteed maximum price probably within the next 30 days. As you know, pricing is pretty volatile, and so they're trying to nail all those pieces down. Once we lock in the guaranteed maximum price, I'll bring it to you for award. So I would expect maybe next month to have a GMP, and then we can get that project under construction and rolling as well. So exciting time for some of these projects that have been in front of us for a pretty good while. We're ready to get them moving. So that concludes my update. Mayor, I don't believe we have a need for executive session today.
No, sir. All we lack is item 19 to adjourn. May I have a motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
At 7:36, we are adjourned. It always bugs me.
Why was Bonnie need to be here? I thought maybe
EDC budget.